I am not sure about where this journey will take me. And I'm starting to be okay with that.
Black and white in the moonlit sky. Dance upon these lips.
If you're just stumbling across this video, hello, nice to meet you. My name is Rue Cooper. I am a singer-songwriter from Nassau, Bahamas, who is now living in Edinburgh, Scotland. That's been a whole journey. For the sake of this video, just think of me as yourself, somebody who has a dream, who has a passion, they feel like they have a calling. And it's not just a bedroom calling, right? For me, my calling as a singer has actualized into my day-to-day life. I gig, I'm a freelance musician, I do community music, I don't have to necessarily worry about getting to the point of being a musician because I am a musician. And that in itself is a huge blessing, is a huge accomplishment. But then what next? What happens when you keep driving and keep pursuing and then you get burnt out? You lose yourself. You realize that being a star, being a musician whose name is known around the world comes with a lot of ugliness to it, comes with a lot of exploitation, because there has to be an element of that to get people to pay for very expensive concert tickets in the midst of a recession, right? I'm starting this channel seriously to document who I am now, to process what my values are, to think out loud, how can I still deem myself successful even if that means not raking in millions of dollars every year, millions of pounds every year? I don't know. I've never been somebody who was really driven by money, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't feel like I have something to prove. Unfortunately, I went to university twice. I have a bachelor's degree in English and political affairs. Wait, that's not the title. Politics and International Affairs. Can't even remember my degree. I then came to Scotland for my master's in international development, but I realized that the career path I was on, my assumed career path of being a diplomat, wasn't actually what my heart wanted. Ever since I was a girl, I'm talking very young, like 2 years old and younger. And I know this because there are videotapes and my parents tell me the stories, of course, but ever since I was that young, I would always songwrite. I'm not talking like writing out songs on a sheet of paper, trying to compose, but I just mean going in my parents' bed and sing a song on the spot for them and continuing the narrative, and then just being on the computer and like starting to sing. I love singing. I loved it. And when I realized I was at my first real crossroad as an adult, I couldn't neglect that feeling anymore, that feeling of something pulling me. Because even when I was in academia, in my classes, when I would drift off, because I daydreamed a lot all through school. I love to learn, but something in the back of my mind just wants to get out of my body for a little bit. The daydream I would always come back to would be me on a stage singing to people. It didn't matter how many people, it was just being in love with the idea of having that opportunity to express yourself and be seen. But because from people who maybe know me but don't truly know me, it does look like I went to university, was on the verge of having a very good job and being able to start to set myself up for life. It kind of looks like I'm in my reckless era. I don't subscribe to that because I know who I am and what I'm trying to accomplish with my life. But there have been some snarky comments from family, really just family, if I'm being honest. But it does get in your head. And in a world where nothing is guaranteed, success isn't guaranteed just by being one of the many musicians putting themselves out there and trying to chase a dream. It makes me wonder, how can I sit with myself and be okay with who I am if this is all that I get? And I know from an outsider perspective, that sounds quite self-defeatist. I'm not giving up on myself. Excuse me, I need some water. I'm not giving up on myself, but I'm trying to ask myself to mature and to visualize a life for myself that does not depend on external validation to feel like I have received that success. For example, in the situation I just gave you with my family and how I said that some people are pushing back on me. What does it look like to not care and to be able to be so firmly rooted in myself that people can say whatever they want to say about me? They can be super critical with me and it still wouldn't impact how I see myself. Because I'm at that stage in my creative journey where, yes, it started with empowerment. And I think that's why so many great things were happening for me at the beginning, because I had that sense of empowerment and I was just in flow with life. It didn't matter about the likes. It didn't matter about releasing music because I was flowing. Getting likes didn't matter. Having social media profiles didn't matter. Being good at singing didn't really matter because I'm still evolving as a singer. And when I look back at some of my older videos, I'm just like, wow, oof. Some of those notes weren't really sounding too good. But that didn't stop me, and it didn't stop people from resonating with what I was doing. And I feel like I am so blocked right now. I'm on the edge of coming out of it, but I still feel it. And I was listening to Mark Manson talk today, not in person, but just on YouTube. And he's the author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which I never read because I thought it was just like a clickbaity title. I was drawn to it, but I was like, And it's funny because he did address that in the episode he was doing, where some people are turned off from his book because they associate the name with the book being a quick fix to not care about anything. So I was like, oof, he kind of guided me there because I am one of those people. But he was talking about emotional maturity, which is something that's on my mind a lot as somebody trying to come to terms with the legacies of colonization, imperialism, patriarchal thinking, sexism, religiosity, all of these things where I'm sure my Caribbean siblings can really relate to me a bit. And in the video, he was talking about how you have childhood, you have adolescence, and then you have adulthood as being your three main stages of development. And how in adolescence, that's when we become aware of our social status, our social grounding, unlike a child, right? Whereas a child, you're like, if I want something, give it to me. I don't really care about why I can or cannot have this. When you're an adolescent, that's all you know about. You know who you are, you know how others are perceiving you. So you see life as a series of transactions, a series of bargains, where you know that if you get validation from someone, it then informs you a bit more about where you stand because others are receiving that same information about you. But we do need to grow past that to get to the state of adulthood, which is being willing to have some values that you will metaphorically die for. Maybe literally die for, but I'm not there yet. And you become okay with the fact that things aren't transactional, because how can your values be transactional? So it's just some food for thought. And this is a video that I'm sending into the void because I don't have a script, which is very clear. But as I'm getting ready to exist without fear, to allow myself to be seen despite the judgment that will be out there, because of course I'm going to be judged, and of course not everyone is going to like my music, and of course some people are going to think that my voice is bad. That's fine. But what's on the other side of that for me? Forget about the social informing that engaging people will then tell me about myself. What does it mean for me to be to the point where I'm ready to once again choose my craft and to let that inform my sense of values so I can now be a bit more well-adjusted, be who I can be without caring so much and being so fearful. I think being a singer is very karmic for me because it involves your throat, right? Your throat chakra is so engaged when you sing. And it's a choice that I felt empowered enough to apply to my life, the act of choosing music, because I was in a point in my life where I prioritize self-expression above anything. So now that I'm a singer, my success, not in the capitalistic sense, but more so in the personal gratification sense, depends on me being able to be heard a bit more than be seen. I'm hungry. I need to be willing to be vulnerable enough to let myself potentially get hit by criticism and still sing even louder the next time. I need to be able to write down what I'm thinking, even though so much of what I want to express about myself, my life, and who I am is very taboo. Because it's not like I'm somebody who immigrated to Scotland and all my life is here. I'm still very rooted in the Bahamas, even if it doesn't sound like that. My family is there. My life is there. I do envision myself going back there one day. And It's not a super tolerant country. So what happens when I want to be a version of myself that the Bahamian population at large doesn't agree with? Am I really willing to get shunned by the place that I come from? All these things and more we're going to explore. But my laptop is starting to give some notifications, which I wasn't betting on. So I'm gonna wrap this video up here. If you listened this long, thank you. I'm assuming it's because you related to something that I shared. So let's start a conversation in the comments. And let's see where I am when the next video drops. Peace.